Welcome back to Gamer in the Wardrobe, where I literally play games, video games, TCGs, in the comfort of my closet. Today we're going to be doing Set 4 Spoilers, the Contenders edition, or at least what we know now. So I'm just going to be covering the Contenders that we know from Set 4 that's coming out in November. There's currently 7 Contenders coming out. 2 of them are going to be in the Clash kit, so I'm going to cover that in a separate video. So let's just dive right in. Genesis Returns is Set 4 coming in November 2024. Really exciting. Should be meta-changing stuff. Even these Contenders look really fun. So here's my take on them for what we know. There are some spoiler cards and Clash cards and things that have come out. I'm not going to talk about those in this video. I'm just going to be talking about the Contenders coming out and then sets 1, 2, and 3 cards that are going to synergize, or that I feel will synergize really well and maybe even be sneaky. So dive in with me and let's have some fun. First one we're going to review is Shadowlight. This is a really interesting contender. It's the first dual side contender, so it's going to have a black contender and a white contender side for their color resources. The black contender, Dark Absence, says, at the start of your turn, this contender loses 1 health. During your primary phase, you may pay a white resource to flip this card. And then just for the purposes of this, so let's say you're on the black contender, you pay 1 white resource, you flip to the white contender, and it says when you flip to this side, switch target Clash cards attack and defense power until the end of turn. And Shadowlight Clash cards you control get this Clash card can't be the target of an attack unless the attacking player pays 1 resource of any color. Really strong, right? It switches the attack and defense until the end of the turn. So if you have really high defense stat units and you're trying to get some damage through, whoop, flip it to the white contender, bam, 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 and then at the end of that turn, they switch back. So maybe your opponent doesn't have any obstructs, maybe they have no resources and no obstructs, maybe they have no units on the board, so you can just get some really quick, fast, efficient damage in by swapping it if you have defensive characters. And a lot of the Shadowlights tend to have higher defensive stats from what we're going to see. And then vice versa, if you're on the white contender, during your primary phase, you may play 1 black resource, and it flips to the black contender. And then it says, when you flip to this side, the black contender, if a Clash card was returned to your hand from the Clash zone, draw 1 card. And then Shadowlight Clash cards get +0, +1, and Torment. Torment means if you want to obstruct them, you have to obstruct with at least 2 Clash cards. So you have to double block if you want to block. And then the bottom one, when they get below 15 health, once per turn, you can engage the contender to flip it, right? So the flipping can be really cool and really cool. It's a really cheeky ability, and I think if it's played properly, it could be strong. Obviously, in Set 4, we're going to have to see more cards, more Shadowlight cards and things like that, because that's part of this contender's ability. It somewhat limits the contender to Shadowlight cards to get the full benefit of it, but I think there are some cards that I'm going to talk about in a second that do synergize well, at least from what we know now. So I'm just going to review a couple of them that I think are going to synergize well. Number 1, we got Piercing Darkness. It's just a -3, -0 counter attack, which again, I think this contender will play more defensively, trying to, prevent a lot of damage done to it, and trying to really just get you to have to pay resources to basically not do anything because of some of the abilities. You have to pay a resource to swing, you get -3. Well, now you just spent a resource to try and kill something, and you didn't even kill it, and I only spent 1 resource on my side. So that's the Piercing Darkness. This one, the Shadowlight, just in general, it's a 1-drop, 1 pip. This card can't be obstructed by Alpha Clash cards. And that brings me over to this second card, Shadowlight Darkness Rising. Can't be attacked by Alpha Clash cards, and then you may play this card without paying its resource cost by returning a white Shadowlight Clash card from your Clash zone to your hand. So, for instance, the way I'm kind of mapping this out, at least of what I know now, is let's say you are on the black Dark Absence contender Shadowlight. You play out for 1 white resource, you play out this Shadowlight as a 1/1. You swing at the contender, because remember, the black Dark Absence gives your Shadowlights +1 defense. You ping that defender for 1 or the contender for 1, and then you can play Darkness Rising for free by bringing the Shadowlight back to your hand, right? Now, this card doesn't necessarily say bring it back to your hand. It just says when returns to your hand, you can do that. But there are ways where you can bring the cards back to your hand. Now, sorry, let me rephrase that. The Darkness Rising 2 cost says you may play this card without paying its resource cost by returning a white Shadowlight Clash card from your Clash Zone to your hand. So, to rephrase, you're on the black contender. You play out the 1-drop Shadowlight. You swing, hit the contender for 1. You don't die because you get a 2 defense buff. And then you play Shadowlight Darkness Rising from your hand, which is a 1/3. Pull the Shadowlight, the 1-cost white Shadowlight, back to your hand and draw a card. Because you returned a card from the Clash Zone to your hand. Did that all make sense? Hopefully that made sense. And then this Shadowlight is going to be able to switch your defense and attack power. So a couple other Shadowlight cards that, again, are going to get the buffs from these, specifically the Contender Torment, +0/+1 defense Torment. You have a 2/2 if it's on the Dark Presence or Dark Absence contender, and trigger attack, target contender or clash card gets -1 until end of turn for each Shadowlight Clash card you control. That can be really, really strong. If I have, let's say, 3 Shadowlights on the board, and you have a 3/3, well, I can turn that into a 0/3, right? Or if let's say all your cards are obstructed and you have a 1 attack contender, I can swing with this -1 off of that contender, and then everything else I have, maybe it has 1 defense, it no longer dies because your contender doesn't have the attack ability. So I think that could be kind of sneaky. It's a 2/2 on the Dark Absence side, and then on the other side, again, you wouldn't probably want to switch the stats, but you have the ability to switch the stats. Shadowlight Eclipsing Fighter. When this card deals clash damage to opponent's contender, you may return this card to your hand. If you do, put a Shadowlight Clash card not named Eclipse Fighter from your hand into your Clash Zone engaged. So you swing, you hit their contender for 3, bring it back to your hand, play out a Clash card, draw a card if you're on the Dark Absence, right? If you're on the Bright Beacon, you can switch the attack and defense to deal 4 instead of 3. So that's another way that you can kind of use that ability of the white contender. And then we have the Finding Equilibrium. Trigger enter target clash cards. Target clash card gets -X until end of turn, where X is equal to the amount of Shadowlights. So again, if they have like a really beefy one and it's really strong, and I have 3 Shadowlight cards, I can play this out of my hand, and I can minus that clash card's attack by however many Shadowlights I control in the field. Now, a couple of cheeky cards that I think can be really, really beneficial. Grant Park. All of Shadowlights, at least to the moment, are alpha clash cards. This little symbol right here in the bottom right are all alpha clash cards, right? So if I get Grant Park Chicago on the field, everything gets +0/+2, so +2 defense. And then I can activate the Bright Beacon's ability, and all of my cards switch target clash cards, so when it's flipped to the Bright Beacon, all of my clash cards on the field at that time's attack and defense, they switch, right? They'll switch. So if I have a 3/4 Eclipsing Fighter, and then I play Grant Park Chicago, he is now a 3/6 Eclipsing Fighter, and then I pay 1 white resource to flip my contender to break from black to white, it's now a 6/4 attacker, right? And imagine if you do that with all of your Shadowlights on the board at the time. Let's say you have 1, 2, 3, like a 1, 2, a 2, 3, and a 3, 4. That's now a 3, 6, a 2, 5, and a 1, 4. Well, now they just flip their stats, and you can go bang, 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 swing, swing, swing. Another Clash Ground I think that could be really cheeky in this, and primarily because I feel like Shadowlight I don't think is going to necessarily be archetyped to a black-white, but in order for this card to really get its full optimization, you're going to need black-white to flip the cards to do those things. So a lot of these cards are going to be black-white cards, is Victory Peak. Not necessarily for the victory you gain 1 health, although that will happen eventually, but you can counterattack and counter non-clash damage. once per turn, I can engage this card, prevent 3 clash damage, or prevent 3 non-clash damage if they play a spell. So it's going to make it really, really hard to kill my Shadowlight cards. Not only are they having to pay a resource to swing at it if I'm on the Bright Beacon, but now they're going to have to overcome 3 non-clash or 3 clash damage, or they're going to be really beefy from Grant Park Village, giving them +2 defense. So that's kind of like the what's available now. What I think will eventually be a little, these are a couple of cheeky cards that I'm going to here, is all alphas. So they're all alpha cards, so they're all going to get the benefit from Grant Park, but the Buffalo is just extremely good, right? Engage this card gets +0/+1, so it's now a 3/5. It has a counter-attack ability that prevents basically all damage from coming to it, and it minuses the stats of the card attacking. And then on top of that, if I have Grant Park on board at the time as well, it's now a 3/6 if it's standing, and it's also a 3/7 if it's engaged. And then the same reason I have this card is when it restands, if I have the ability to flip from Dark Absence Contender to Bright Beacon, its attack stats switch, attack and defense switch, so it can do a lot of good damage. And then on my turn, my opponent's turn, still become a really good defender because its stats will go back. Same thing with the Warcry Defense Warden. It's a 7 cost, which is really expensive, but I can trigger Obstruct. You may switch this clash card's attack and defense power until end of turn. This card can't be dealt non-clash damage. So it can't be dealt non-clash damage, right? Now, in this same vein, imagine I have Grant Park Village on the floor. It's now a 1/10 card, and I flip to Bright Beacon. It's now a 10/1 card. Pretty powerful. That's some really, really high value damage you can get through. So it's a really, really strong card. Obviously, it costs 7 to play, but maybe something to consider in this archetype or in this contender from what I know and what I have now. And then lastly, Spiritual Stampede. Until end of turn, clash cards you control get breakthrough and assign clash damage equal to their defense power rather than their attack power. Until end of turn, you can't play clash buffs. So in the same vein, Shadowlight has high defense clash cards, and then this, instead of flipping them, instead of switching attack and defense, it just assigns the defense power to the attack. So Grant Park Chicago plus Defense Warden, and then I can get a Spiritual Stampede out the next turn. This is now a 10/10. A 10/10 card, right? So some cheeky plays. Obviously, we only know so much right now with Shadowlight. Some cards have been revealed that are going to make him a lot stronger, but I'll reveal those in the next video. So that's what I have right now for Shadowlight. Should be a really interesting contender. I'm excited to see what people do with it. All right, next we have Moxie. I actually think this one's going to be a really strong contender. It says once per turn, when an Alpha Hunter clash card you control is defeated, create 1 red badge weapon accessory token. It has attach or 1 red resource. Attach clash card gets +0/+1 and can attach 1 additional non-token weapon. At 15 health, Alpha clash cards with 2 or more weapons attached get Fortitude, meaning their attack and defense can't be reduced by effects your opponents control. And then also Alpha clash cards with a badge weapon accessory token attached get +1/+0. So ultimately, when this gets below 15 health, every single one of those badges is a 1/1. It's a 1 attack, 1 defense buff. And I can attach, additional weapons to these cards, which is really kind of what the Alpha Hunter archetype is attaching weapons. Now, a couple of cool cards I think that are going to be really, really strong with this. The first one is going to be Moxie Engaged. It can already attach multiple weapons. Trigger attack, if this card has 3 or more attached weapons, you may draw a card. So, if I just attach a couple of tokens to this thing, it's going to be able to draw a card every time it swings with really high defense. If I'm below 15 health, it's a +1/+1 every time. When this card deals clash damage to contender, you may reduce the attach cost of the next weapon you attach this turn by 1 black resource. Obviously, that wouldn't be a badge, but there are a lot of black weapons in this archetype, in the Alpha Hunter archetype. Next one over, this one's actually going to potentially be playable now. Primed to Clash Moxie is 5 black pips, but it says you may reduce the resource cost to play this card by a black pip for each weapon you control. So if I have the 1-drop Moxie, another 1-drop, another 1-drop, and and they all die, and it creates 3 red of those badge weapon tokens, well, this card now only costs 2 black to play. If I have 5 weapons on board, it's free, right? So you can see how this could really, really synergize well with this Moxie. It also has trigger Enter. You may send target Alpha Clash card with an initial resource cost of 2 or less to Oblivion. So if they have a low-cost Alpha card on board, you play this card out, it goes. But the big synergy is it's a 3/3 potentially for free if you can get those weapons and those badges created from your contender and on board from hand. I want to go down here because I think this one's a pretty cool one, Siberia, that I want to spend a little bit of time on. But the Moxie 4-drop is going to be insane. It reads, this card gets +1/+2 as long as 1 or more weapons are attached to it. So for 1 red badge accessory token, badge weapon accessory token I can attach to it, it gets +1 defense, but it basically gets a +1/+3 when it's attached because it's getting the stat buff from the card itself. So by attaching a weapon that I basically got for free because an Alpha Hunter died, I attach it to this. This now becomes a 4/6. A 4/6 virtually for nothing, right? Extremely strong. And then you can attach another weapon on top of that, right? So really, really strong card here. Really good potential for this to be a staple in the Moxie deck. This one was kind of fun. I added a couple cheeky things here, so you may agree with some of them, you may not, but I'm trying to talk about cards that aren't already staples or played all the time. So this is Weber Keen-Eyed, 1 cost, 1 black. Trigger Obstruct. You may unattach a weapon you control. If you do, this card gets +2/+2 until end of turn. So if I have a bunch of these badge weapon accessories on the field, and he's on the field, and those weapons are attached for, +0/+1 to other cards, well, at any time, I could just leave him standing. He's a 2/3 blocker, right? I block, I obstruct, I unattach one of the badges, he becomes a 2/3 blocker for 1. So this could be a really, really strong defensive card in this deck that gets a lot of value from some of the things that this contender's trying to do. United Nations headquarters, it's pretty straightforward. Alpha Hunter Clash cards get +2 and +0 in Interception. Interception means reach. I can block stuff that has flight. And then the attach cost of weapons you control reduced by 1 black. Again, not going to work with the badge weapon accessory, but a lot of the weapons you're going to run are going to be black. So it does work there. I would say the unfortunate thing about this contender is it kind of like Shadowlight being black and white, this kind of has to be a black and red contender in order to get access to the Clash buff we don't know yet. It hasn't been announced yet. I assume since this is a red contender, a lot of the Alpha Hunters in set 4 are going to be red, and the only Alpha Hunters in sets 1 through 3 are black. So this is basically going to be a black-red contender, and that's where the attaching reduction of black will come in handy. And then lastly, this card has seen virtually no play. Siberia, Clash cards lose Super Speed and can't. Super Speed's not super relevant because Mean Streak is just not good at the moment. But attach costs for red and black cards are reduced by 1 red or 1 black. So in theory, right, I could basically, if I have 5 of these badge weapon accessories in my accessory zone, I can attach all 5 of them for free if this card is on board because it's reducing them down to no attach cost. So kind of a cheeky situation, really fun. Couple other cheeky things that I think could be added to this are Crimson Scales. Mostly because it's red, it can be offensive or defensive. I can shoot my own stuff and kill it in order to create a badge token and draw a card. I could do a lot of cheeky things with Crimson Scales in this deck, and since red's going to be a resource we're using, this just seems like a no-brainer. Machina, Master of Metal, could be fun. He gets +X attack, where X is equal to half the number of non-trap accessories you control rounded down. So if I have 8, or let's say I have 5 or 6 of these badge weapon accessories, or let's say I have 3, and then another weapon that I played from my hand. This card now is a 4/3 for 2 costs because it's getting the benefit of the things in my accessory zone or the accessories that I have. They don't have to be in the accessory zone. So could be a really strong card. I mean, you could have a 6/3 for two resources. You could have a 5/3 for 2 resources, depending on how the game's going and how things are working, right? And then lastly, I really think this card could be relevant in this deck. It has a special summon where if you have a card that costs 5 or more in your clash zone, you can just summon this for free, replacing the 5-drop that's out in the clash zone. It trigger enters, puts a target accessory in opponent's control on top of their deck, but this is the thing that I think is most relevant with Chao Ling. So follow along with me for a second, right? One of my Alpha Hunters died early on. I now have a badge weapon accessory that attaches for 1 red pip in my accessory zone. I have a 5-drop out on the field. I swing, I hit them for whatever damage. And I have Siberia on the field, right? Siberia reduces the cost to attach red weapons. I special summon Chao Ling, and then I attach that weapon, that red badge weapon, to Chao Ling. So he's now a 4/6. He swings at the contender, hits him for 4. And the crazy thing about this is, A, not only did I get extra damage because he swapped with the 5 cost and swung again, he's a 4/6, but then at the end of your turn, if this card has an attached weapon, ready this card. That could be pretty strong, right? So that's what I have right now for Moxie, at least with the current set. More cards are going to come out, but I'd love to hear your feedback on some of that. Next, Kilimanjaro. I think out of all of them, I don't want to say this is the one that I'm most excited about, but we don't really have a strong discard type contender, you know, and I think this is just going to be a really unique play style, which I'm excited about. The first ability I just love, right? Trigger attack. You may draw 1 card, then discard 1 card. If you discarded a clash card this way, this contender gets +1/+0 until the end of turn. So if you discard a clash card from your hand with this ability, he is now a 2/0 contender. And I want to talk about some of the synergies I have coming up, which are really exciting. The other thing is, at the start of your turn, magnitude. Magnitude is where X is equal to the number of cards in your Oblivion. So if you have 10 cards in your Oblivion, magnitude 10. If you have 15 cards, magnitude 15, magnitude 20, so on and so forth. So if you have 20 cards in your Oblivion, at the start of your turn, you're getting every single one of these perks. You gain a health, you draw a card, and all black alpha clash cards you control get +1/+1 until the end of turn. If you're at 10, you get the first one. If you're at 15, you get the first 2. So that's insane. Now, you got to remember, it's at the start of your turn. It's not just whenever you want to do it, but really, really, really strong effect. So first synergy, restoration. Here's something I'm going to break down on the next slide, but let's say it's like turn 2 or turn 3 or whatever. Trigger attack. You swing. You draw. Let's say you have a black resource up. You swing. You draw a card. You discard a 1-cost clash card, right? With an initial resource cost of 1 or less, you discard a 1-cost clash card, swing at the contender as a 2/0. They don't do anything. They don't obstruct. They don't. You then buff. Now he is a 3/1 clash card, right? 3/1. And then you can pull something back that you just discarded out of your hand. That's insane. That's awesome. That's so cool, right? Couple other things. This is a kind of revolving around portal control because a lot of his cards I think are going to rely on some portal stuff. Rizlak is, you know, I can just discard it to activate the portal, and then I can play it from my Oblivion for 2. Really, really strong card. It may not be perfect for this archetype, but I just like the card in this deck for portal control without paying resources. Lava Blitz. The portal has to be open, and you know both players discard their hand and then draw 5. So if your opponent's hoarding cards, let's say at 8 cards and you have 2, you play Lava Blitz. They discard 8, you discard 2, and both of you draw 5. Right? Some of his cards have been revealed that work around discarding and gaining advantage from that. Again, I'll cover that in the next video. But Lava Blitz is going to be a really, really unique card for this contender. I have Pestilence, World Degrader, mostly for portal control, but it also gets a buff if an opponent's card is defeated in the primary phase. which would lead us to Kilimanjaro, the 4-drop. It's a 4/4. You may discard any number of cards from your hand. For each card you discard this way, target clash card gets -0/-2 until end turn. So, Lava Blitz costs one more black pit for each card you have in your hand, right? So obviously this would be turn 7, but for some synergies, I could play Kilimanjaro out of my hand, discard everything from my hand except for Lava Blitz, kill one of their units, then play Lava Blitz, and then draw 5 cards, and they discard whatever, and then draw 5. And then in the same time, let's say hypothetically, this Kilimanjaro harnessing powers on board. Whenever you discard a card, this card gets +1/+1. So, let's say I have 5 cards in my hand, it's turn 7, one's Lava Blitz, one's Kilimanjaro. I play Kilimanjaro from my hand. I discard 3, turning this Kilimanjaro currently into a 6/6. I played a 4/4, killed something for the 3 cards I discarded, then I play Lava Blitz, and then draw 5 more cards. So some really cool synergies. And that's not even, and then even let's go one step further after that. I then draw 5 cards, and then I swing with my contender to draw another card, discard another card, then boosting the Kilimanjaro. So now this is a 7/7, a 4/4. I just got rid of a 6 defense, 7D, whatever it was, 6 defense clash card, and I now have 5 cards back in my hand. So I'm excited to play this card. I don't know if you can tell. And I just put all of that stuff into my Oblivion, creating a larger magnitude buff for when my turn comes back. So I'm excited about it. So here's a couple of things I broke down with it. Let's say it's turn 1, turn 2. Let's even say like turn 1. Turn 1, hypothetically. Your opponent went first. They played out a 1-drop Haven. Whatever, right? Or maybe they played out something. I don't know. Let's say they have a card that you can target, right? Or let's say they have like a 1/3. Let's say they have the Conquest, the 2-drop Conquest on board. It's a 2/3. I swing with my contender, draw a card, I discard Lyn, right? I discard Lyn. So now I'm a 3/1. I'm not saying that they would obstruct, but no, sorry. I discard the Lyn. I'm a 2-0. I'm a 2-0 contender. They decide to obstruct. Okay? I discarded the Lyn. I have 1 black resource up. I play Restoration. Now my contender is a 3/1 contender. I pull the Lyn from my Oblivion onto the board, engaged, put the bounty on the Conquest that's obstructing. The Conquest dies from my contender, and then I end my turn, and then I can pull a card right out of my Oblivion because of the Lyn effect. Same thing with, for instance, the Magnate Gamma Charged. I discard it, I bring it back out to activate the portal. Same thing with the Pestilence. I discard it, I bring it back out to -2/-2 something. If the portal's open, I don't discard. If it is, I discard. So I think there's going to be a lot of cheeky things you can do with this contender, but that's just kind of something that popped into my head immediately with some set 1, set 2, set 3 cards that are available now. All right. This is one that I'm really excited about, actually. Genesis. Once per turn, you may play 1 ready card from your resource zone as if it were in your hand. If you do, put a card from your hand into your resource zone. Whenever a Genesis Clash card is played from your resource zone, you may activate the portal. One big thing is the card you play can't be engaged to pay its own cost, right? So if I have like 5 resources in my resource zone and one of my cards is a 5-drop, I cannot play that 5-drop because I can't play the card itself. I can't engage the card itself that I'm trying to play it, right? So think of it like if I ever want to play something from my resource zone, I have to have 1 pip or 1 resource over that card's resource value in most scenarios, except when a Genesis goes below to 15 health. At that point, non-clash buff cards you play from your resource zone cost 2 blue less to play. Insane. Really, really strong. I'm going to break down how I think that's going to benefit. But first, the synergies are pretty clear. It's a blue contender. A lot of its benefits are going to be from blue cards. So the Lyn Haven bundle is going to make a lot of sense. I think the better luck next time, counterattack. And I want to explain this because this is not just, it says once per turn. Not once per your turn. So for instance, I could play the Lin Nanite Assassin on my turn from my resource zone, put a card down, resource it, and then have better luck next time also in my resource zone. And then on my opponent's turn, I can play better luck next time from my resource zone. I can do it on both turns, my turn and my opponent's turn. So I think a lot of counterattack and counterplay cards come in handy here because you can, if you resource them and use them properly, they get a really, really big value. And again, at 15 or lower health, better luck next time only costs 1 resource. Lin is free. Haven is 1 resource. And I added the Plasmax in here because it's 2 blue pips, but if I'm at 15 or lower health, it only costs me 3 to play it from my resource zone, which is really, really cool. The other 2 cards I added are Harbingers. Since this is a Harbinger archetype contender, I'm assuming there's going to be some strength around Harbingers. Whether it's going to be black or red, I'm not sure. I think Death could be really, really strong. Well, actually, Genesis is probably going to have blue Harbinger cards. So Death is going to be very strong because not only can I activate the portal if I play a Genesis from my resource per the contender's ability, but if the portal's open, the Death Endbringer gets extreme buffs. And then on top of that, if that card that I bring back from my Oblivion is a Harbinger, it gets +2 and +2 in Necrotic until the end of turn. So it could be a really, really, really strong. Black, blue might be the Genesis build. On top of that, if I want to get a little cheeky, we have the red War the Second Horseman. A, it's a Harbinger, and B, it's just a really, really good card. So I want to talk about this because this is something that I'm hoping a lot of you guys already thought about, but 2 pip blue resource cards are now huge value, right? If I'm at 15 health or lower, T-Bone, a 5/4 vanilla, only costs me 2 resources to play on my turn. That's insane. That's insane. I can get a 5/4 for 2 resources. Same thing with Apex Tempest. Awesome effect. It's an amazing blocker. Trigger defeat. So you obstruct. You may engage target clash card. So they have 2 clash cards. You obstruct with. He swings. You obstruct with yours. You tap the other one. Amazing. For 1 resource, I can play that from my resource zone. Lin the Disruptor. For 1 resource, it's a 3/4, and if my opponent has 10 or more cards in their Oblivion, it has Flight. A 3/4 flyer for 1 resource? And then the Lin's Battlescape. And I'll get into this for a second. I think Genesis could potentially be a bounty diminished deck for the value you're getting from those blue pips. You can play Lin's Battlescape for 1 resource. You can play Streak Blockade, counterattack on my opponent's turn for no resources. 0. I can just play it, right? I would have to play a card from my hand and resource out of it, but I could play that from my resource, and they can only do 1 more attack. Extremely defensive card. Mean Streak for 2 resources. Apex for 4, 1 being blue. And then the other Apex for 2, colorless, right? So these are really, really strong plays, some offensive, some defensive, but really kind of cool. But this is something I want to talk about. Genesis could be a new diminished bounty deck. I don't know what support he's going to get, but imagine a scenario where you're at 15 health, you're just milling your opponent, right? You're playing the 1-drop clash buff where they diminish 2, or maybe you draw 2 just to get some card advantage. You play Lin's Battlescape because you have the Lins on board and you're bounty target listing their guys, and you play Lin's Battlescape from your Oblivion. All of their clash cards that are bounty get -2 and can't attack, stalling the game while you continue to diminish their deck. The Lin comes out of your resource zone for 1 resource and is a 3/4 flyer. Target list, free out of your resource zone. And I think this is going to be a really unique card. Central Park says whenever a card is put into a player's Oblivion from anywhere other than play, that player's contender loses 1 health, right? So if I'm continually diminishing, and I can play that from my resource zone for free on my turn, because it costs 2 blue pips. If I'm at 15 health or lower, it's free. So I play that out. I swing with Cyber Optics. They mill a card. They take 1 damage. I play Augmented Reality. They mill 2 more cards. They take 2 more damage. They lose 2 more health. I play Lin, right? I play Lin. The 1-drop. They mill another card. They lose another health. So I just did 4 damage to their contender, and I haven't even swung yet, right? And then again, some defensive options, right? While I'm milling, while I'm playing that style, I'm being defensive. -3/-3 with Lucky's next time for a counterattack. Prevent all clash damage with Lefty's Last Stand. So it's a weird take, but I don't know. Like, I'm kind of interested in playing Genesis as a potential diminished bounty deck. I think that could be really fun. I don't know if it'll be really strong yet, but I assume Lynn will get some support in set 4, creating more diminished bounty options. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Because I think that's pretty fun and could be pretty unique. So lastly, I have Khagan, the Eternal Dragon. I just don't know enough about this because I don't know the contender weapons. I don't know what he can attach. None of them have been revealed. None of them are in set 1, 2, or 3. So for Khagan, I'm waiting for more spoilers. I apologize if you guys were excited to see what was going on, but without more information, it's just hard for me to give it to you on Khagan. So what are your thoughts? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you got this far, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. What contenders you're excited to play? What synergies do you think are going to go off? And stay tuned for the next episode where we're going to go into more spoiler cards, more clash cards, yeah, I appreciate you watching. Thanks.